Today, I have the wonderful Kayla Casey on the Awaken Feminine podcast, who is joining me all the way from Ohio in the USA. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kaki. This is so fun. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah, we connected quite a while ago, and we talked about you coming on my podcast, and we're finally here. So I'm excited for our conversation.
Yeah, it was your creation of the book and
Yes.
the co-authoring that got my attention when you put out the call,
Yeah.
and that's how we connected. And this is the result. So congratulations, by the way. The book is amazing.
Oh, thank
I
you.
I
And
spent like the one night last week just like reading and I knowing many of the people in it. It just made it so much more personal. And your story
oh, thank
is
you.
really neat.
Yeah. And actually, I don't think I've ever told you the neat thing about you answering my call. I'll just quickly talk about it because it's actually quite a fun story. So, the day that I received a message from you, that morning, I connected with my book. I'm like, what do I need to do today? And I got the answer, so. And I'm like, so? Okay. So I went to get sewing kits. I like literally drove to the shops, bought like five sewing kits, and I just sewed the whole day. I just did like cross stitching.
So literally, so
Yeah, like cross stitching. And I'm like, okay, so I'm like, don't know how this is gonna bring me like people to ask me about my book, but okay. And then literally that night, you messaged me.
oh my gosh,
Isn't it
such a
wild? I've got goosebumps just talking about it.
the, the confirmations that just come. We just need them, you know.
Yeah.
It just makes it so exciting.
Yeah. So I like you've got a special place in my heart because it was just like, oh wow. Like I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Like, how can like someone answer my call? And you actually literally said, I'm answering your call in your message. So I just remember you so vividly, like because you were my confirmation that I just need to trust.
Oh my
Sorry, I'm getting a
gosh,
bit emotional.
yeah. Isn't it awesome how this works? I mean, literally ask, and if we allow that receiving to happen, I mean,
Yeah.
it's that fast. And
Yeah.
there's no way the world, the universe can conspire to put this person here to then get nudged by their inner soul to respond to this. And here it's a direct answer to a request I put out. Like that blows my mind.
Yeah. And the
Seriously.
fact that it makes no sense to sew, right? You're like, oh, bring authors in by sewing. Like they'll answer your call. Like, what? And I just went, okay, fine. Because I was going through doing a trust experiment that time. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to trust that. And it was like confirmation. So I just thought I'll share that because I thought you might like to hear it as well.
That's neat. I love those kind of stories. It just
Yeah.
makes this all so real when it seems so unreal, you know.
Yeah, definitely. But enough about me and my little story of how we met. But Kayla, I would love for you to just introduce yourself to our audience so that they know who you are and what you do.
Oh, that's always such a tough question to answer, you know? Okay, well, what's so amazing about tonight and answering your call, we'll go back to your story. Um, the book wasn't on my path at that time, but the invite for this podcast, I looked at your calendar and tonight was open. February 22nd was very purposeful in choosing to be with you tonight because this is the 1 year anniversary of my rebirthing of the business that I started 2 years ago, called Young Ascended Masters. And about 4 years ago, I came into realizing my mission and purpose in being here at 58 at the time, I think I was. What am I really here to do? Um, and that's working with spiritually gifted kids, highly intuitive, highly sensitive, whether they're conscious of their abilities or not. and really being a guide and teacher and mentor and a recognizer of who they are, which is so amazing to be that person, and to help them navigate this world. Growing up with spiritual abilities, one, scares people if you're your true authentic self. And I have been running groups with kids and just me and them, and it's our group, and we explore these things and they come together in community, not feeling so alone, which is again the greater purpose. And then at the same time, not being in a vacuum. They have a family and they have parents, and that mission really stretched into parents very quickly. And you asked in your questionnaire early on, like, where's my fire right now? I'm working a little less directly with the kids, but it's through being with the parents, their parents. Some who are awakened, some who, because of these children coming in today, are awakening. And that's where the excitement really is for me. So I work with a whole spectrum of parents and run support groups and do some conscious parenting coaching. And think they're talking about their kids when they approach me. Like, how do I help them, not get sucked into the programming that's out there and they want to do this and, various social things that are going on today. We won't say those words out loud, but, they're buying into stuff that me as a spiritual person doesn't. And here it comes back to our own journey. Their own fears are being reflected through their relationship with their children. And as I just hold space for that to unfold, magic happens. I mean, so it really looking at our divine conscious inner child is this natural extension of working with these conscious children. And so back to February 22nd tonight, I was just with my inner circle of tribe friends to celebrate this day. And it's just never would have seen myself here 4 years ago, 2 years ago. Your journey, I know yourself. I saw your first podcast with Emily, and here you are, so just trusting. It's back to that. So, in my not former life, but I've been an educator in special education for kids with emotional and behavioral disabilities. I hate that word, but challenges. And working with this very difficult, emotionally explosive, angry, violent, they're the same kids. They're the same kids as who we call spiritually gifted and woo-woo out there. They're all working in this same environment to just how do we get through it? As adults, it's challenging enough. And as a kid, how do we support them enough not to lose who they are so they can follow their passion and be the gifts to the world that they came here to be? Yeah. So it's such an honor to be a part of it.
I love the work that you do. It's so amazing. And yeah, it is so true that our relationship with our children is like a reflection of ourselves and what unhealed, I think the unhealed parts of us that is kind of expressing, and what we see and we don't like. It's all the parts that we need to heal ourselves. That's what I found from my journey with my two little girls. But I just love the work that you do, and that, you're working now more with the parents, because I think that's so important, especially like I just love the spectrum of people that you work with, from like the awakened parents to like the my child's a bit, different, and I need to kind of start awakening to come on this path with them. So I think that's really beautiful that you're able to hold space for that different spectrum, because I don't think not many people can do that for such a big spectrum. Most people can only hold space for like the people that are like them, or you know, it's it's a different way of holding that that space for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I had a great advantage working with kids that, again, we say have disabilities, yet they have a different way of being in this world, that required me to really meet them where they're at. And some of the children had like a dual diagnosis of cognitive delays as well. So everything was put in simplest terms. So I find I have a gift of just doing that naturally, because I really had to learn how to do that.
Mm.
But I think some of the challenges being in spiritual communities, we have our own vocabulary and we have our own culture, and we're using words that, a sibling or a neighbor or someone else isn't going to understand. Like, for example, young ascended masters, a lot of conversation about, do you really want to brand under a name like that? Because one, who even knows what an ascended master is? So I had to make a conscious choice on like what group would understand that. And it took a couple of years then to realize, lately, my new people are the ones that don't understand that, but there's a traction and there's an energy, and they're being attracted to my experience as an educator with tools and behavioral, emotional, social curriculum, brain development, all that stuff. So how can I help my kid who has some behavior problems? Is where some folks are coming from. And then we realize that the perception of their responsibility as a parent, my child is a reflection of me, and when they step out of line, I mean, it triggers everything, just like you said. It's all that. These kids are inviting us. So again, I'll just say the generations coming in more with more memory, that they're not just human. I'm not sure how to even best express that right now, but like, they're telling stories of, they remember having another mom. Well, if you're not even in the spiritual realm or believe in reincarnation or any of that, you're either going to take them to a therapist or get really scared by that, or say, honey, that's crazy stuff. Why are you saying that? None of those responses fit today's kids. So you're going to struggle a lot more without having some sense of openness and curiosity as to what's coming out here. But if you have never been exposed to the spiritual stuff, how can you not? So I mean, it's at that sweet spot of, am I suffering enough as a parent? I mean, we all go through it. Again, one of your questions is, what are some aha moments and spiritual awakening experiences? And they all are painful. They all like bring us to our knees of, I don't know what else to do. And in that moment of saying that, boom, I answer your call. Somebody drops in and gives us that message. And I totally lost track of where we were going.
Well, you were talking about who you are and what you do, and you've told us beautifully all the amazing things that you do with, the children and the parents who are, gifted in their own ways. Yeah.
And I do. So just to go back, young ascended masters.
Yeah.
Just to like, what is that? And I realized, just reflecting on this anniversary date for myself, is driving desire and excitement came from one of my favorite books. It's called Anna, Grandmother of Jesus. It is channeled. I grew up Catholic, so it took a lot of my own growth was separating God from that Catholic church in order for me to even start a spiritual path. And that wasn't until my 20s. Being open to this Jesus figure that a friend of mine was in a relationship with, I'm like, well, that's Catholic. I don't know, but it sounds really neat to hear her talk. And there was an openness to, I want to know what this relationship is. And I did some playful making Jesus my pen pal. And I didn't know I was manifesting a reality. Like that relationship already exists. I just don't know who you are. So I'm going to keep journaling. I'm going to write to you. And within 2 weeks, ascended master Jesus or Yeshua showed up in my driver's seat. I mean, literally, I'm driving somewhere and there was this visceral presence next to me, and I knew who this was. So that started and opened up like a whole new experience for me. That's I want to go into all of that, but coming across this book, I couldn't get enough information of the human life of Jesus as this relationship unfolded. And I wanted to know everything, as well as then, internally, what that being meant in the spiritual world and the guidance and all that, that's not the Catholic stuff. I came across this book, and it was Anna, grandmother, talking about her grandson. It rewrote the entire Christ story of the religion, and it'll knock your socks off, or it will be so reassuring as truth. So either way, it's an exciting read. And in that, I discovered he didn't come in all knowing. He came in still with a veil, much less than any of us, just because of the light he held in his being as a human. But he still needed to learn how to be human. And he agreed to come into this human suit. And at the time I read this book, I was like, this was the worst deal in the world, and all these human flaws and my own judgments and all this stuff. I just kept pushing back and pushing back. And here I read that Jesus had teachers and mentors and went through initiations and would probably be called ADHD if he were alive today, and would have these emotional outbursts and meltdowns that mom and dad would send them off to a cave to say, hey, go in there and be with yourself, be gentle, allow it to pass through you. And it's so here's Jesus. I mean, Jesus, having to embrace his human self, didn't know that he was an ascended master until he lived his life being open and surrendering and living. And when it came time to start this business and to really do this work on my own, it was right there in front of me. These kids, what if we looked at our kids with the potential of them being an ascended master? Mm-hmm. I mean, how would we change our interaction with them just in the openness and the nurturing and guiding? And so it couldn't be any other name. And it's just so magical. And that being guided by Yeshua, Jesus, in the Christ Collective, it just all comes together and fits, and it's sweet.
Ooh, I love that. And I think names are so important. There's a frequency in names, and what he struck me was when you said, it had to be that name. And you're like, well, but some of the people that actually come to you, they would have no idea what it even means, but they come to you because of your expertise. They know that you can help them. So it's the frequency the name of your business. It just brings people in. It's not about what it's called, it's what you hold. So yeah, I love that and what you do. And yeah, I was just getting the tingles when you're saying if we can see our children as that, that unlimited potential that they are, instead of putting boxes around them and labeling them as well.
Yeah, and not being afraid to let them have experiences.
Mm.
And we're all here to work out our own karma. You can be the most loving, unconditional, guiding, just do it all perfectly. If there is such a thing, there isn't, but if we could say that for a moment. And your child could be the soul that is coming in, agreeing to work off as much karma early in life and be cleared of it to then go on and do great things, which means they're going to struggle, they're going to have pains, they're going to look in ways, and for example, the behavioral problems, the addiction, the coming to have experiences, and they're going to be very human, earthly experiences. And it's their journey. So for a parent to trust enough to step back, just like our own journey, we look back, we're like, I had those lessons and I had to learn those lessons or I wouldn't be me. It's the same for the kids. As much as it probably breaks a parent's heart. I'm not a parent. I'm an aunt. I'm now a nanny, and I'm learning so much about my honor to all of you who have chosen the parenthood path. Oh my goodness. It's so hard. It's so hard. It's so, yeah, I love it. But to truly trust and walk that and pick them up, teach them the inner compass that's within them, and to let them make choices, but make it teachable. They really made a bad choice and these are the consequences. And it's not a reflection of my parenting. Like, how hard is that? Because you're going to be judged and your family's going to judge you and your neighbors are going to judge you and the other parents. Like, you don't have any, what do you mean you're going to give your kids choices on what they do or classes they take or, just silly stuff, but big stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a courageous walk. So hats off to you and anybody who's listening. I mean, it's truly one of the, I think, hardest soul path to live your own journey. That inner journey yourself is exhausting to me, doing it for myself without those family responsibilities. And then to have enough energy to do your own work after taking, that responsibility on.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. But
yeah.
But I think for me, it was having the children that started my awakening. So it was very much I lived in the very 3D material success, like, the external successes, like having a great job, being in a respectable profession. I was a pharmacist. I used to run the children's hospital, all the titles, that you're given. My husband and I make good income, but I was still feeling like I don't think I ever thought about myself. It was always like, oh, let's please everyone. Let's show how good. It's not like I go out on my way to show people that I have a good life, but it was very much like I do it because I also want to look good. I want to, make my parents proud, all those kind of things.
Right.
And then when I had my first daughter, it was, then I started questioning, like, why am I here? Is this even the career that I want to be in? All these things. And that was my first kind of like glimpse into awakening, my spiritual path. And I remember going to see a Reiki specialist because I had postnatal depression, something
Wow.
that I would never even, was a pharmacist, so logical, so scientific, would never even think to go down. But I had two people in 1 week tell me about their Reiki experience. And I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll try it. And it was just like, whoa, what just happened?
Seriously, there was my experience too. I thought I'd never really heard of Reiki.
Yeah.
And this was in 2012. And have been through a journey of decades of depression but perfectionism, so nobody knew about it, and
Yes.
living up to something, and these self-destructive thoughts and the negative, and oh my God, if anybody ever knew what was going on inside of my world, just
High functioning.
a common experience unfortunately. Got to the point, even going back to teaching was like the second career. Just a real quick, I got out of college, was a computer programmer, majored in math, had no inkling that I would even keep myself alive long enough to care about a future. So I tripped over it. I really depressed teens and 20s. Jesus came in, dropped into my car, led me back to this church that programmed the daylights out of me. As long, again, life, it's not just church. So I'm not anti-religion, because that led me to actually explore the women who were nuns. And 2 years later, I'm joining a convent and spent 10 years in a convent. Yeah, talk about working off past life stuff. I'm still seeing, why did that happen? It was a response to where Jesus led me on a path where I totally surrendered. I know about 18 inches in front of me at any given time. And it was like I said, it was a visceral stuff. I had no idea what clairvoyance was. I used to meditate and not even knowing what I was doing, seeing, hearing, having conversation, never saw it as anything other than what it was. I'd be journaling to Jesus and getting stuff back. I found out 3 years ago that I'm automatic writing. I mean, like, I'm channeling. I never had words for any of that stuff. And it took me 30 more years to recognize that that's what it was. But it led me in that surrender to go into the convent, to work whatever it was out. I lost Jesus in that. I tried to conform. I tried to be. I learned about her church history, which, like, wait, what? These dogmatic things are happening. People are taking their lives over the judgment that they're feeling because somebody made a choice to have their town sell more fish. I mean, seriously. So I won't even go there. But I spent 10 years there, and with integrity, I couldn't take final vows. So I left. But the community and the ministry and the vibrancy of these women, not the stereotypical nuns, I mean, really powerful, running hospitals and doing ministry. And, that was the attraction. So it took me a while to recognize that. And it wasn't enough to then represent the church, which is what people would expect a religious sister to be. And I couldn't with integrity do that. But in the meantime, they asked me, what's your passion? What do you want to do for ministry? Because you're not going to get paid anymore. You went from this awesome paying job to this bow of poverty that we're going to pay you $90 a month to spend as you wish. And you're going to turn over your salary, whatever that is. What do you want to do that's going to get you up in the morning, knowing that you're not getting compensated the way you used to? Who has a chance at age 35 to answer that question? What an opportunity. And in that, I shadowed various women in the community, from running soup kitchen outreaches to teaching, to didn't like the teaching thing, never went there, but I did. Um, and followed a woman who was a chaplain at a youth detention center. Um, these are kids that were in double lockup units for being sexual offenders at age 14. And I met, well, I'll tell you the story. So I'm following this woman scared to death. I mean, scared to death. I'm 35 years old and I'm like scared of these, not scared of these kids physically, but it's like, it's all just so foreign. And here I am being called sister, feeling like I was never in a habit. It wasn't a community that wore habits, but I'm standing at the doorway in this double lockdown unit while the sister I was with went and talked to one of her clients. And eye level on the second bunk was this young teenage boy. And he looked up from his pillow and made eye contact, direct eye contact. And he goes, "So you a nun?" Now I was 35. I was good looking. I didn't fit like the stodgy old nuns that they were used to. Not, nothing personal, sister, sorry. But, 35, they were 75. So I said, yeah. And he shakes his head and he plops it back in the pillow. And he looks up again. And he said, "So you don't get no sex?" And it was so innocent and earnest. And here I am standing in a sex offenders unit. And what I know about those kids now is that 98 to 100% of them have been abused themselves. And here's this kid who can't comprehend life that it doesn't involve sex. I mean, literally beyond his belief. And in that moment, it's like I saw the spark of God in this kid. I didn't know who he was, what he was in for, but I saw this spark. And from that moment on, I'm like, I'm here to touch that. If they could see it for just the tiniest moment, and that set a mission to go back to graduate school. Thank you for the sisters who sent me back for that education. And I got into special ed, working with those kids. And it's yeah, these are the kids that are the marginalized and thrown away and most damaged.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah. So I spent like 15, 12. Okay. And that goes back to your Reiki. So I had this mission way of thinking. If I could just save one kid from experiencing, I had a tough childhood that, got me depressed by the time I was 14. I had a sister die when I was 4. So it set a stage, immediately. So I chose the karma that I'm talking about. I know what I'm talking about when let me just have one emotional experience after another. And I'm now able to talk to these kids about hope and about not taking their life and about, so many things that it would just be head concepts, So I see this as a great gift that took me 58 years to see as a gift. So I started teaching these kids for 10 years and took on what I now consider like the responsibility of the parent. For the first time, I had children under me that I'm responsible for. And if I could just save one of these kids, well, I burned out, got myself really sick medically and emotionally, and hate to even, like, I was one of these burned out people that teachers like fear being. And I left that environment for about 5 years and was cashier at a bookstore. It was great. It was tough. Every job is tough, but in that stress and in that depression coming back, I met a guy that was guided to work at a bookstore, shelving books. So here's who we're talking about: people who live their life through the information they're receiving. His story is he walked in to buy a book for his homeschooled daughter, and he was guided to fill out an application, and you need to get a job here. Well, here this guy fell off a cliff 9 months earlier, broke his back, was in the hospital for 4 months, and he is now going to be shelving books 4 hours a day. Didn't know why he was there, but he responded to the call. This is where you need to be right now. I didn't know any of this. I train him on the cashiering, whatever. I hear that he's some guy that got saved by angels. Fascinating to me. I talked to him maybe 15 minutes here and there on breaks, but nobody that I ever would link up with, you know? And I heard he did Reiki. I don't really know what it is, but I know people can really have a relaxation response. And my stress level was going so high with just personal stuff and everything else. And I reached one morning, I'm like, David, I don't know what you do, but if I could at least just like balance a little bit, would never have asked a guy, would never have asked a coworker, would never, all these things that shouldn't have happened got me on his table before. And, right. So by the time he got to the hand position of the ankle and the knee, waves of emotion over my sister's death in 1963. Stuff in therapy that never, sobbing on the table. I don't even know this guy. And I'm like snot-nosing, running. And there was nothing to say. And I just blessedly said, memories of my sister are coming up. I don't know why. And he said, just go with it and breathe and let it pass through you. I had no idea of energy. Never heard of ascension, never heard of channeling, never ignorant to all of that, except my experience with Jesus that went on and was undeniable. I'll never defend it. And had a pre-birth experience and memories of being asked to come here as I was a suicidal person, saying, I never asked to be born. And guess what? I did. What a weird thing is that? So here's David. And in that moment, I was hooked. That was the life-changing moment that there's no going back from. Like, what just happened here? I sat up from that table and I just looked at him. I said, that's not your mom, it's Reiki. I mean, like, and he's so gifted in every area that it wasn't, and it changed my life. And that was in 2012, and worked with him for the next 5 years, like literally every other week, just clearing and cleansing. And there was enough of that entanglement and entities and a life of crap lessons. 5 more years of looking at beliefs and programming and choices, and back to the savior. Here I am. If I could be a savior. Well, you know what? A savior needs someone to save. And in order to be saved from what? Which means, what do I believe someone needs to be fixed from? Who am I to fix them? And then turn that around on ourselves as spiritual beings, knowing that we're projecting ourselves. That deep question. So what in you do you believe needs fixing? Whoa, and it just sent to a whole new thing. But it came to this realization of the programming of being a savior for another. How arrogant is that? How am I not going to let you live your own life path? And that changed everything. I mean, it changed my own processing of perfection, and spent 50 years looking for that next guru and looking for that next teacher and looking for that next therapist. Well, this therapist, I'm not fixed yet. I'm still having these struggles inside. I just haven't found the right person. I haven't read the right book. I haven't taken the right course. Something out here needs to fix me. And it was like, wait, what? You mean that? What? Yeah, it just shook my world. Shook my world.
Wow.
And that's again where the parenting thing, it's something's wrong with my kid. Yeah, it's just all so perfect.
Yeah.
Just all so perfect.
I love your story. Yeah, wow, you've just had such a big journey with all the things that you have been through. And I just feel like our conversation today is just, it's letting our audience hear, like, it doesn't matter where you start from or where you go to, that it's all perfect. You're meant to be where you're meant to be right now. And yeah, just allowing God or universe or whatever higher power you believe in to just work through you and trust that you're on the right path, even though sometimes, it is hard.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, how could suicidal depression and abuse? I mean, like, how can that be purposeful?
Mm.
And I'm going to share with you right on my wall here. For the last 4 years, I heard someone speak this as they were channeling information. First time that all the puzzle pieces fit. And it's, we walk the human story we're meant to transmute in others. So as I'm working with the emotional frequencies and helping kids stabilize and balance these high vibrational kids with the emotional bodies and heart chakras and all that stuff, I needed to walk, I'll say it again, we walk the human story we're meant to transmute in others. I look back, it was an emotional journey. I didn't have physical challenges. I didn't have mental challenges. It was all an emotional experience along the gamut. And when I heard that being spoken, it gave purpose to my entire life. So even having people look at your own life, there's nothing more amazing. Challenge yourself to this. Say you have to give a 2-hour presentation of what's important to you and reflect on your life and hone down all the lessons that you've learned. Oh my gosh, you start seeing the patterns of your experiences. And if you want to find out what you're here for and what your purpose and mission is, really do that exercise. Look at, I was attracted to kids in coaching. I read all about emotional abused kids, didn't know why I was reading these books. I had these, a pattern will slowly reveal itself. And this is your work. Your life is going to be used in the service of assisting others. That's how this human stuff works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's so profound and so true, because that's been the same for me, just looking back at what I do now. I look back at everything that I've been interested in. It makes so much sense now. Like pharmacy wasn't the career it wasn't what I loved, but what I did as like the manager, building relationships and all the other things that weren't pharmacy was the stuff that made my heart sing. And it made so much sense. I would be reading like, how to be a leader, or like, how to, have a better mindset, all those type of things. Like I didn't like reading about all the drugs and stuff. It was all that, people stuff that I was interested in. So yeah, it's definitely totally agree with that. And, you back to what you said about giving children choices. Yeah, I get, it's funny because growing up, I think most parents, whether they're Asian or not, are like, you're the child, I'm the parent, I know best. This, you just have to go and do this. That's it. And from a young age, I would always give, like my first daughter, I always give her choices. I'm like, what do you want to do? Do you want to do this or this or this? And I used to always get told off by not told off, but like my mom and my mother-in-law would always say, why are you giving her choices? Like, you're giving her too much freedom. And I'll be like,
Yeah. Well, and you asked the question. You didn't ask me the question, which is okay. The whole awakened feminine, what it's
um,
all, it's recognizing that we are the chooser of our choices. And until what does empowering really mean? It's recognizing that I do have the power over my own life. Now, we may be in prison bars and you have no external power, but you still have the mindset. You still have the, how am I experiencing this and what am I choosing to feel? How are kids going to learn that? And as you talked about, even, recognizing our passion, my passion, working with the kids and the parents, the spirit, the creativity, their mission is all about passion. So if we can nurture and support what they're passionate about at an early age, they aren't going to have to do all this unprogramming that we spent the second half of our life to get to this point.
yeah.
And it's not easy. It's not easy. It's all about the judgment that's coming in, but that child will lead, and that intrinsic knowing what they're interested in is just, you'll see it if you look for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But,
And yeah, I'm just looking at the time, and I usually ask this question at the beginning of the show, but we just kind of went in, and I was like,
we
yeah,
did.
and it didn't feel right to just kind of cut off and go, I'm going to ask you this question because that's what I usually ask. But I think it's actually a beautiful way to end our time together, on, in this particular time together, because like everything, all your experiences, everything we talked about, what is your definition of an awakened feminine?
And taking time to reflect on that really brought me back to who I am in this moment. How would I, even the feminine masculine is like, oh my gosh, I get caught up in, what does that really mean? And being, recognizing that I am the chooser. I am the commander of my ship. I am embodying warrior and wisdom keeper at the same time. And then the other stuff that came through is really discovering, I mean, this spark of God is like really big in my pattern. Awakened feminine is discovering that spark of God in you. And whether it's for the first time or it's embracing it deeper. And then tied to that is really an awakening to our intuition and trusting it. So the first step is, oh, wow, that's really intuitive. And look at these synchronicities and all that's going to happen. But then listening to that is where the deeper, we all just keep going deeper and deeper. So that's what I would say.
Yeah. I love
and
that
claiming
definition.
my own awakened feminine. Thank you for that question, because I just don't use those words often. So it was really challenging to like, I want to be on her podcast, but darn, she asked that question.
It's like, how do I answer? What does it even mean?
How do I answer? It was really thought provoking. I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Yeah. Oh, Kayla, I just don't want our conversation to end because you've got so much more that I want to kind of like dig through. But so I think you might have to come back another time and have another chat with me.
I'm open. It'd be fun. 10 o'clock. Hey, that's okay. I'm all wound up at this time of night.
Yeah. And before we go, what is a message that you want our listeners to take home with them after hearing our conversation today?
Well, this is different. Don't be afraid to turn around and look at yourself. I mean, really stop and look and take a step back and look with eyes of compassion. I never did this. And eventually doing that enough times and having enough people reinforce what they see in me, it's like I didn't have to keep looking and stepping back because it was me. But it's a journey and one step at a time, and just, yeah, you're in there and you're awesome.
I love that.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's so beautiful. Oh, Kayla, thank you so much for sharing your love and wisdom with us today. If people want to find out about more about you or, work with you, where's the best place to find you?
The website is youngascendedmasters.com, and some offerings. I'm just my two most fun things to offer right now is teaching what I learned about automatic writing. So there's a real, like, a quickie automatic writing. If you've ever want it demystified, oh my gosh, we all can do it, and it's life changing. And so I offer a couple courses, long, short answer. And if you want to reach out and explore any of the other coaching or mentoring or any of that stuff, it would be on the website.
Awesome. I'll have your details in the show notes so people can find you. Thank you once again for spending time with me.
Oh, thank you so much. All right. Thank you, everybody.